Good day, this is your registrar making a presentation on professional liability insurance for pediatric and neonatal RRTs. Respond with insurance, don't react without it. The learning objectives for this presentation are as follows. Define professional liability insurance. Differentiate the legal statute of limitations between pediatric neonatal patients from adult patients. Explain the significance of claims made insurance for pediatric neonatal practice settings. Describe considerations when sourcing professional liability group insurance coverage. Participation compared with individual policies sourced from brokers. Describe the importance of having a professional liability insurance policy following the casually employed provider rather than reliance on an individual employer's policies. Read and comprehend the 2010 University of Calgary Law School case review of Susan Nellis, RN. This slide provides a definition of professional liability insurance, or PLI, as described by the Canadian Insurance Bureau. Essentially, PLI protects professionals against liability for damages and the costs of defense arising from their alleged or real professional errors of omissions in the practice of their profession. This is not homeowners' liability insurance coverage on a rider on such a policy that you may be familiar with. Pursuant with Section 8 of the corporate bylaws of the college, the minimum coverage currently required by registrants is no less than $5 million per occurrence, plus additional requirements. This is to compensate patients, clients, or residents for damages associated with unskilled practice. The employer's policies are no longer suitable because they do not respond on behalf of the employee responding to allegations of unprofessional conduct. Situations were arising whereby registrants were practicing with no liability insurance coverage. This happened in situations where the employee was working casually for multiple employers, mistakenly thinking that one employer's insurance policy would respond for practice with a second employer. You need professional liability insurance that follows the employee exclusively. Please note, with no PLI coverage is 20 years, a long time to have your personal assets exposed for providing pediatric patient care. As a result of the Alberta Health Minister's request, there is new professional liability insurance coverage, and it's listed on this slide. The coverage period will be April 1st or later to March 31st the following year, wherever and for whomever you are working. The professional liability insurance $5 million per claim to a $10 million annual aggregate is also required. This must also include disciplinary legal expenses up to $100,000, criminal defense reimbursement up to $100,000, sexual abuse therapy and counseling fund of $50,000. There must be zero deductibles involved, and the coverage territory will be worldwide claims that are filed in Canada or the United States courts. And last but not least is an extended reporting period for 5 years, providing a bridge of protection for any leave of absence a registrant might have or retirement. Insurance terms continued include the certificate of insurance. What's important here is you must upload your certificate of insurance when you renew for the 2025-2026 registration year, and there are no exceptions. It will be verified during the continuing competency audits being conducted by the registrar and referred to the complaints director if necessary. Practicing without the prescribed liability insurance coverage will result in a referral to the complaints director and possible disciplinary action. Remember, during practice permit renewal, you have sworn a legal declaration stating you have such professional liability insurance coverage prescribed in the bylaws and registration of policy approved by the council. A claim is fairly straightforward. It's the exercising of a policyholder's right under a policy to be paid by his or her insurance company for certain financial losses suffered. A claim can be any notification of a possible loss under the insurance policy, whether or not payment follows. For every claim that is reported, the insurance company must set aside money or reserves sufficient to cover its anticipated costs. A claimant is one who makes a claim, and most importantly, for pediatric and neonatal respiratory care, a claims-made policy refers to an insurance policy that provides coverage when a claim is made against the policy, regardless of when the claim event took place. A claims-made policy is most likely to be purchased when there is a delay between when the claims occur and when they are filed. And this is typical in pediatric neonatal care. Continuing with insurance terms provided by the Insurance Bureau of Canada, coverage refers to what an insurance contract covers and can be interchangeably used with insurance or protection, as in fire coverage or fire protection or fire insurance. Damages is the money claimed by or ordered to be paid to a person as compensation for another's fault or negligence. Important here is the limitation period. This is the time that's prescribed by law within which a party has the opportunity to bring a legal action. For adult patients, it is 2 years. For neonatal and pediatric patients, it is 20 years. We have some important considerations for professional liability insurance policies. Obviously, you want to make sure your policy has the suitable coverage for at least the minimums. In some cases, some policies are over and above the minimum requirements, and that's fine or is acceptable. Another thing to consider is the reputable status of the insurance underwriter and or the insurance broker involved marketing the policies on behalf of the underwriter. An example of an underwriter would be Lloyd's of London, a term that probably many RTs are familiar with. Group plans typically have lower premiums than individual plans if you can find an underwriter willing to take the risk to underwrite a solitary respiratory therapist. Factors that limit availability of insurance include oxygen administration, our resuscitation involvement, and operating any life support equipment. These are typically procedures underwriters are not prepared to take the risk to underwrite. Our concluding slide illustrates a case study on Susan Nellis, RN. She was an assistant head nurse in a pediatric intensive care cardiac ward at the Toronto Sick Children's Hospital and was involved in a landmark case involving malicious criminal prosecution. There was some circumstantial evidence, not proven beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the criminal standard of burden of proof on the Crown. And ultimately, her case and charges against her, there were 4 charges thrown out by the Ontario Provincial Court. Subsequent to the case being thrown out by Provincial Court, there was a Royal Commission of Inquiry, and Chief Justice Grange was appointed to conduct the inquiry into the deaths of a total of 36 babies between June 1980 to March 1981. And of interesting note, Justice Grange found no fault with the registered nurse who had insisted on legal representation while being interrogated by the Toronto City Police. And her insistence on having legal representation was one of the major reasons why the police charged her. They concluded that she must be guilty because she's wanting legal representation. This is a foundational legal right under the Canadian Constitution. The civil lawsuit by Susan Nellis occurred for malicious prosecution against the police, the Attorney General and Cabinet Minister involved, and the police prosecutors. They tried to argue that they were shielded from having to defend any lawsuits for malicious prosecution, and the courts found that the government of Ontario could not be sued. However, the cabinet minister, prosecutors, attorney general involved could all be sued for malicious prosecution. Ms. Nellis symbolized the human ordeal that can occur at the hands of overwhelming state investigatory and prosecutory power, and illustrates the necessity for professional liability insurance. In her case, she was responsible for paying for all of her fees and eventually settled out of court for compensation from the Metropolitan Police Service, the Minister, and the Solicitor General's office. Please read the case study. It's a most enlightening review, and it's not a long read. Thanks very much for your attention and interest in professional liability insurance for pediatric and neonatal practice settings, and thank you for the work that you do.